First of all, I think your analysis was very straight-lined. History doesn't run in a straight line.
Kid, you cannot tell your neighbor he is stealing ducks when you are stealing fowls.
As High Commissioner, I was wrong. As Charandas Prasad, I reacted naturally how any person would have.
I did not come here for that kind of abuse. I did not come here for that kind of abuse. If you're going to go down that road, I'll walk off.
But it's all okay once they're talking. If they weren't talking, I could not have been here today.
You got ADHD.
I got nothing.
Calm down.
I think I've done enough in terms of taking our team out of trouble from losing.
Tomorrow, Taylor. That's good. I'm reading the script now, and the first person that comes to my mind to play a detective,
Yes,
but
the
an
kind of
erratic
Mikhail
detective
Rodriguez.
is Mikhail Rodriguez.
Why an African slap an Indian? Why a man and slap a woman? No, how you deal with that? You deal with that.
We must encourage platforms like this because it brings together different people and allows for discussions to take place in our country on a multiplicity of fundamental issues.
Kingdom, you apologizing for something you think I did is wrong. I don't want you to do that, and you should not have done that. Hi, good evening, or good afternoon, good morning, good night, wherever you are in different time zones. This is the Freddie Kissoon Show with our co-host, our reliable co-host, Leonard Craig. We have in our studio this evening someone who's always been generous when we extend our invitation, and he is definitely a privileged person on this show because he has never refused us. He is a financial expert, and what more appropriate time than to call him in to discuss the budget. I guess you can know from those little words we're talking about Joel Bagwandin. So pleasant evening to my co-host Joel Bagwandin, and a very warm welcome to none other than my host. Did I say Joel Michael Leonard Craig? Oh my God, Alzheimer's stepping in. Welcome to my co-host Leonard Craig and the man of the moment, Joel Bagwandin. So Joel, thanks for being here once again, and I guess we can have you. I want to start on a different note, not the budget. Dr. Vincent Adams of the AFC leadership, I thought put a jumbilash on Leonard because he said Leonard was an AFC discard, all kind of thing. Roy Johnson told me he didn't consider it a jumbilash. He considered a toothpick lash. Well, it's a new one, toothpick lash. But I see you jumped into the fray and put a jumbilash on Adams, in which you went through your research and showed that when Adams retired from the Department of Energy in the US, was at no very, very senior level. So that is, you consider that a jumbilash or a toothpick lash?
I don't know how you consider it, but what I've exposed is that these guys, they come here and they embellish their track record and they embellish their CVs to the point that it is bordering dishonesty. I don't want to call it dishonesty, but it's bordering dishonesty, embellishment, because he presented himself as the second person in charge for the US Department of Energy. Now, when you make these statements, historically, I mean, now we're in an age of information and Facebook and social media and the internet and so on. Historically, people never really pay much scrutiny to things you say, but now it's a different time, and these things are easily verifiable. The Department of Energy, their website is online. You could access it. You could access information. And on the website, there is the organizational chart. And the position that he held, according to the Department of Energy, not him, was a deputy manager. That was his portfolio. That was the title that he held at the time of his retirement. And in that portfolio, I can understand you were delegated responsibilities of directorship of a project, but his substantive title was that of a deputy manager, which he never presented himself as, but contrary to what he presented himself as in Guyana, the authoritative source says something else. And the chart is there. It's like about 7 levels below the person second in charge, or the department that is at the second level of the hierarchical structure of the Department of Energy.
I think that reply by you was very germane, but also very revealing in that we do have these people who come here and they say A, B, C, D, consultant in this organization in Italy, but they're saying that we don't.
But it comes down to your track record. You could say anything. You could go to a job interview and you could say anything. But when it comes to delivering, it's a whole different matter. And that was demonstrated, which I did expose as well, his performance at the EPA. Now, over the last 4 years, I've often heard the vice president attacking him about his poor performance, which was atrocious. But I've never taken it up personally to independently investigate or interrogate what the vice president was saying about him, until when I saw he was getting, he was dominating the media with nonsensical arguments, which Leonard had responded to with his confusion about cost oil and profit oil and the whole nonsense he talked about. And Leonard correctly responded to him in terms of how the mechanics work in terms of the cost oil and profit oil. His interpretation was completely flawed, and that prompted me now to actually investigate his tenure. Well, when I say investigate, I mean independently assess. Investigate is perhaps a strong word, not any sort of investigation per se that I went in there and dig up stuff. It's stuff that is publicly available on the Environmental Protection Agency website. And what I did, he often talks about his US career and he's this and his qualification and that he has 2 PhD and 2 masters and a whole sort of nonsense. But let's give him the benefit of the doubt. If you're coming with that sort of credentials and track record of accomplishment under your belt after so many years, 4 decades, I would expect to see that the permit that you would sign, because it is when he retired, he came to Guyana in 2017 and took up that role. I would expect to see a very superior, comprehensive environmental permit. And when I go and I do the comparison, the permit that he signed, and this is published, I published it, I put it out nicely. The permit that he signed versus the one that is signed, or those that are signed by his successor, is embarrassingly weak, inferior, and mediocre. I've identified, I went through his permit line for line, section by section, clause by clause, and compare it with the new permits signed by his successor. And there are over maybe about 40 something clauses that the new permits contain that were absent in his, which indicates how weak his permit was. Now, I would expect the opposite. I would expect his successor, who doesn't have all that fancy experience and exposure that he had for 4 decades, I'd expect to see a permit coming from his successor as weak and inferior as the one he signed, but that's not the case. So there is a mismatch. There is a misalignment between what he's saying about himself and what he's actually delivered, and that's only on the basis of the permit. Then there is another issue that I found, which was with respect to the financial accountability, and this is something that it's a chronic problem with the opposition, the AFC and the PNC. Financial accountability is a big issue for them. They're not very good with financial accountability. And so the years that he presided over the EPA, by law, the EPA is governed by the EPA Act. Under the laws that the EPA is governed by, it is required to publish an annual report on the activities of the EPA, as well as that report has to include a report on the audited accounts. There was no report published under his tenure. No report. There was no financial audit done under his tenure from 2017 to 2020.
Just be careful, you're sure.
No. This is facts. This is facts. And under his successor, the guy who's there now, had to come and clean up his mess. That the current leadership of the EPA had to come and get his audits done, get his annual reports done, and all of it, as we speak here today, has been completed, and those reports are now uploaded. So he failed to execute on his fiduciary responsibility as the head of EPA, as the former head of the EPA, both financial accountability as well as operational accountability. And secondly, the permits that were signed under his hand were very, very inferior.
Before Leonard coming and we get into the budget, there's one thing that I have resting in my mind and I can't get it out. And I think it's personal. Maybe it's personal because of the time I worked in Guyana as a state employee and worked with deprivation, 26 years at UG. UG was just empty. When I read what this man was saying and what he did and he just retired at 70 and then comes back to Guyana and displaces a young person who stayed here, went to UG, classrooms, mosquito infested, no windows. And he just waltzed into Guyana in 2017 and became the head of the EPA. Joel, I've been around a long time. I'm double your age. Before 2017, I never heard the name in any forum, anywhere, about a man named Dr. Vincent Adams. And it just shows you how sometimes there's a lot of social injustice in this place in relation to who gets what, when, and how. Man, come back. He has, at the time when Vincent Adams became head of EPA, he had a master's for the Borden School of Economics and did environmental economics. Other people from the AFC, Marlon Williams, Trevor Williams, those people were qualified to be the EPA, and he was in and became the head of the EPA at 70 years. So the bulk of his youth, the bulk of his life, the bulk of his intellectual existence was not put at the availability of Guyana. Anyway, Leonard Craig.
Since we're on this topic, let me just conclude quickly before we turn.
It wasn't a John Bilash.
Before we turn over to the.
It wasn't a John Bilash.
No, the John Bilash still coming, Freddie.
Oh, you're putting a comment with a John Bilash, me?
The John Bilash still coming.
Because you know you don't recover from a John Bilash. You know that. That's why they call it John Bilash.
You don't worry.
So you intend to kill the man.
I won't go there.
But you know, since I put up
well, I mean, philosophically kill the man.
No, but since I put up my response, he didn't come back.
No, he replied. he had a reply.
Saying what?
What he did and the things he did.
Yeah, but that's to the extent. Nothing after that.
Nothing what you notice, you see, when people have gone to school and they have accomplished,
they don't.
I usually like to respect that. Yeah. So I respect Dr. Adams.
But you don't publicize it.
And exactly, and whatever accomplishments he has.
Assuming that they.
Having said that, I am sensible enough to know from reading and research or whatever, when somebody's making rookie mistakes at the very basic level. And that is all I did. Just point out that Dr. Adams was making a fundamental elementary mistake. And all he needed to do was say, oh shoots, it was a mistake in doing what have you. Instead, he chose to attack.
Assault your character.
Exactly. And as Guyanese people say, that's first bell, second bell gonna ring, don't worry. Anyway, so having done that shows a complete weakness in the person. It's a weakness. And it's an intellectual bankruptcy, that kind of weakness, that you're unable to respond in a professional way. You got to go into the gutter when somebody simply just point out a mistake. Further, Dr. Adams is silly and doesn't even know that he's silly, and that's the worst kind of silly.
Stupid people don't know they're stupid.
And that's the worst kind. And let me explain. His qualifications are in the technical aspects of the environment. So, for example, if we're talking about oil and gas, he would understand what percentage of sulfur is in the oil, what percentage of whatever other properties, and then if these properties were to be exposed to the environment, what will happen, fishes, birds, and those kinds of things. That's at the technical level his qualification is. My qualifications are in public policy, economics, and national finance, not accounting type of finance, but national finance. And my comment was about the money side of oil and gas, the national finance money side of oil. I never ever delved into the technical environmental aspect of oil and gas, never did. And then they wrote a long episode to say that I am unqualified. And on those topics, the man that is unqualified is Dr. Adams. He has no qualification in economics, finance, public policy, right?
Or business administration.
Or business, and so that is my, so what you need to understand is that oil and gas got several facets. It got the technical aspect, and so many different
you got economics
thing, and then there is the economic aspect that do with national accounting and stuff like that. And I simply pointed out that aspect of what he was saying was a miscalculation on his part, and I just sought to correct that. But then they wrote and issued this epistle to say that I'm totally unqualified. When you read that, you'll believe I just came out of nursery school, right? Be that as it may, I leave him to his own devices. And what is also foolish is that a statement coming from AFC, there's also a legal side to the oil and gas contract, because it's a contract. So there's a legal side. I do not know how Nigel Hughes, an eminent lawyer, Raphael Trotman, who signed the agreement, David Patterson, who is the counterpart of Dr. Adams on the AFC policy board, I do not know how they could issue these words. Guyana will never get 52% of profits from oil and gas. That is the most ignorant, stupid,
asinine,
and whatever other words you can use thing to say about the money side of oil and gas. It is totally misinformed, and it came from the AFC. And I don't understand if these people, any little child just read the PSA casually will understand that Guyana gets 50% of profit oil. We are getting that right now, and we have been getting that, and we'll continue to get that throughout the life of the agreement.
And any child also understand what is profit. They know that profit is what remains when you after you deduct your costs from revenue.
So there is only one, well, not only one, but there's one major issue in the oil and gas contract that you could have an argument about. And let me just explain for the viewers quickly, and then we'll move on back to Joel. Remember, in the oil and gas contract, you have to take out 2% as royalties. And the 2% is not subject to any form of expenses attached to it. It must be a pure 2% taken out of the ground and given to the government and people of Guyana. All right? Now, what the contract is unclear about is, so you can only charge expenses to the 98% remaining. What the contract is unclear about, if Exxon, because remember, to get the oil out, somebody got to pump it. Let's assume it's only one employee to pump out that 2%. You still got to pay the man's salary, but you can't take it out from the 2%. Is it his salary, assuming that's the total of the expenses, his salary, do you take it out of the 98 or Exxon bear that cost? That the contract is unclear about. And that's the only thing, and I'm not even sure Dr. Adams understands the depth of that. But that's the only gray area in the accounting formula of the PSA, right? That cost to bring out the 2%, does Exxon bear it, absorb it, and do not put it in their, deduct it in the accounting, or do they deduct it from the 98%? That is very, very unclear in the contract.
So there was an addendum to, there was a subsequent addendum to the contract that dealt with that clarified that. You're correct that that part was not clear in the contract. In other words, whether it's cost recoverable or not, whether it goes into the cost bank as cost recoverable. So there was an addendum. Credit to Christopher Ram, who brought this out to light. He was the one who made it known publicly that there was an addendum that clarified that, and the clarification is simply that the royalty is not cost recoverable. So when you see this, so it will be recorded as an expense for financial reporting purposes, as an expense on the P&L that they will file here. But it does not go into the cost bank as cost recoverable. So that has been clarified.
Understood. But all I'm saying is that is the only area one would expect somebody to make a mistake on. And somebody as seasoned that Dr. Adams is. When Dr. Adams started his career in environmental science or whatever, I was still a little baby in Pampers.
Yeah, he's in his mid-70s. Yeah.
I was still a baby in Pampers, right? And to be that seasoned, you shouldn't even be making that kind of mistake. And all I'm saying, if there was a mistake to be made in his calculation, it should have been that.
How Ram is the one who brought out the addendum?
Yeah. He made it known. I wasn't aware of it, but he made it known public.
But the government would have been aware of that, of course, right?
Well, the ministry.
Eventually,
Okay. So the two of you will be on the campaign trail for the PPP.
I am let me make this statement clear. I am certainly going to be on the campaign trail, and I am going to be on the campaign trail to re-elect the PPP to office.
But
and I got no water in my mouth concerning that.
But you said train, and then you said trail. It's a campaign train too?
Well,
generally. So you'll be on the trail or train, Joel?
Whichever one, I don't know.
We
I've
need
been-
young
I've-
people
I've
like
been
you
doing-
guys.
I've been doing-
I think this next government, the next Irfan Ali presidency, he need to rope in some very young people who could give us
let me get
give
to
us
the
a good 20 years of their talent. Give us a good 20 years. We
No,
got
you don't. No, listen. You don't have to. You don't have.
I know I'm not saying anything about people. I'm in my 70s. So I'm not saying anything
No,
about
but I
people.
want to comment on what you're saying, right? You don't have to be in government to contribute to national development. I think doing what I do and the different portfolios that I hold, I contribute to that. Everybody contributes to national development, and that is what is important. So you don't have to necessarily be in government or necessarily be on the campaign trail. I defend them anyways. I defend their
But you
policies
have
anyways.
so do I. But you need also to have people who could effect changes. I mean, you need people with authority. What we are witnessing in the United States is hair-raising. United States, in which the man is changing the traditional policies, is changing everything. So he is saying, I want to effect these changes, and he has the authority to do it. With the government, I take your point, but you also need people to effect changes, and there's so much that needs to be done to make Guyana modern.
We have a lot of talent, man. We have a lot of young people, and we have a lot of talent.
You're being modest. I want to see you on the campaign trail. Brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, I bring you tonight.
There's more on the campaign trail than that. But you know I love elections.
You need
and
more than
elections.
what?
There is more to the campaign machinery than that.
Than
Some
what?
people work than speaking on the mic.
Yeah. Of course. There's I know you like that public part of
that
it. Though.
part of the
He can be
campaign
the
I love.
he
You
can
know
be-
I love it.
He can give you the statistics. So when you speaking at Tamari, we laugh and say, listen, this is what has happened in investment the past 5 years. He giving you the statistics. I can't wait to see the two of you on the campaign trail, man. We need young.
Well, you know I love it. You've been with me. I've been with you.
Yeah. Joe, you gotta join the podium, man. You gotta get up on this podium. It helps. It develop your our rhetorical skills. It develop your delivery.
But Joel is really good at that. Nevertheless.
Anyway,
let's move on to the
He never
budget.
went to the platform. He never went to.
We're here to talk about the budget, Freddie.
This is a restrained platform.
Freddie,
Listen,
why are you recruiting people for Irfan Ali?
listen. I like Irfan. I think Irfan. I am saying this. We go into the budget. This, I'm telling you, nobody anticipated the evolution of this man as it stands now. You know, nobody. This man.
Right.
Nobody. I mean, this guy. I think the PPP is going to reach out to people, and which is normal politics, and the PPP is going to win the elections. But I think that man is going to win the elections for the PPP. I think so. Jagan and Burnham, I'm telling you, didn't have that reach. The reason why Jagan didn't have that reach, Jagan was burdened with seriousness. Jagan was so serious about changing the world that, it burdened him. Burnham was flamboyant, but he still lacked that limitation of really fastening himself. And I think Ali is the only man who's been able to penetrate the society at the level of, yes, Mr. President, how we do, Mr. President? Mr. President, look, I got this thing in the village, right? Could it be done this week? And the president tapped him on the shoulder and said, you want it done this week? I'm doing this thing tomorrow for you. You watch and see. And if it's done tomorrow, you could get and criticize President Ali. Burnham and Jagan didn't have the time or what have you. And I think that has made him a very unique Caribbean leader. I don't think Guyanese anticipated this man would have been like this. The man is here, there, and everywhere.
Yeah.
Omnipresent.
Or ubiquitous. Well, look, he went and do his PhD in international trade, I think, with his thesis. You a financial expert. Let me shut my mouth now and listen to the two of you. about the
All right.
budget.
No, we're gonna listen mostly to Joel.
Joel said, "When he talking, don't interrupt him."
Y'all ask the question. You know?
He is the thing. Joel, I will start with your own impression. Give us your own impression of the budget. The things you find to be outstandingly good, and I also want to put you on the spot. There must be something that is weak about the budget.
But you could start with the first.
Tell me what you would have liked to see strengthened in the budget, and the floor is yours.
So the budget, the theme under which the budget was presented, the budget delivers on that theme in terms of what it seeks to achieve in terms of budgetary allocations in the various sectors, as well as the fiscal policies and measures in there. What impressed me about the budget is I've seen some very innovative fiscal measures aimed to, enhance household disposable income. For example, these measures with respect to the allowance for children, then the overtime on the first 50,000, then if you have a second job, all that menu of measures in there, I think it was very innovative and very commendable. And when you look at the effective rate from where the threshold has moved, the income tax threshold has moved, and the changes in the income tax rate from, you had 40% down to 35% to one bracket of your income, those of who earning above a certain level, a certain threshold, and then 28% down to 25%. So effectively, your effective tax rate for individuals, there's a broader menu of measure, because one of the key criticism that the budget receives from its opponents is that the budget does not adequately address the prevailing cost of living conditions. And they have relied on the $9 billion provision in the budget, failing to understand that that is not the only measure in the budget to contend with the prevailing cost of living conditions. There is a menu of measures in there that were retained in the budget from since 2020. For example, you have the excise tax on fuel imports down from 50% to 0%. You have over the years consistently the expansion of zero-rated items for VAT. You have the electricity subsidy. Electricity cost is subsidized. A lot of people don't know that, but fuel prices have gone up in the pre-COVID period. Oil price was about $50 a barrel, averaging $50 a barrel. Now it's averaging $80 a barrel. So fuel price, the fuel bill from pre-COVID to now has doubled from 500 million US a year to over $1 billion US a year. Now, so that additional cost is not transferred to the household in terms of the electricity rate, and that is only possible because the government is subsidizing the electricity, the fuel cost, which is to produce energy for the country. And that is ranging about $20 billion a year. That's about $20 billion a year. Then electricity rates. Then the reversal of all the measures. The reversal of all the measures in the first budget, which remain and the government continue to expand on, that's another $60 billion a year in disposable income. The finance minister eloquently exposed what those were, enumerate what those were, the fees, this reference about 200 items increasing in taxes. So taxes went up. Then they expanded. You had a whole range of items that were zero rated. This is what they couldn't understand, but the minister, he dealt with it eloquently in his budget debate. a whole range of items that were never zero rated before, that were on zero rate, that they add VAT on. For example, VAT on electricity and water. They said to people that, listen, we said we're going to reduce VAT, and they did from 16% to 14%. But what they did not say to people is that they add 14% VAT on electricity costs, which was never there before. They add it on water rates, which was never there before. Then remember the private education. They put VAT on education. That was never there before. And a whole long list of food items. So those are the items, the list of items that total to about 200 items. And then you have all the fees, the horse cart and the donkey cart that the minister went through in the budget. Right?
If you have three dogs, you have to take out a license.
Right, exactly. And the rates went up exponentially, double and triple the cost. So those measures I'm referring to that were reversed to the pre-2015 era cost about $60 billion a year. If those measures had remained in 2025, the cost would have been double, almost triple. So that would have been an additional maybe $120 billion in burden on each household. And you would recall that in the budget presentation by the opposition, their chief spokesperson on finance said that they increased the debt by 5.9 million, the debt burden per household. And then she went on to make this argument that imagine what you could do with $5.9 million per household. But what she failed to recognize is that, first of all, her calculation, according to me, was wrong. The increase in the debt works out to about $3.9 million if you use 300,000 household. She probably used a lower number of household in her calculation to get to overstate the number, but official estimates suggest that we have about 300,000 households. So it works out to about $3.9 million per household. But what is important that I explain in one of my letters to the editor dealing specifically with that argument is that the increase in the debt burden, which works out to, according to my calculation, $3.9 million per household, it's not a real increase that is transferred or that is placed upon the household, because the only way that happens is if that increase in debt is accompanied by increases in taxes, which was the case in their tenure. In their tenure, they increased the debt burden by maybe $1 million per household. Close to, let's say $1 million per household. And that debt burden was actually transferred to the household because they increased taxes, they add VAT and everything, they increased the rates that we just referenced that were reversed. All those costs to finance the budget were accompanied by increases in fees and taxes that were effectively transferred to the household, which in turn becomes a burden upon the additional cost burden upon the household. So in their case, when you make the argument that the increase in the debt burden per household is a real effective increase, that is true. But contrast that with the current administration, that is not the case. It's only in nominal terms, because what the government has been doing, they've been lowering the tax rate, so the burden is not transferred. The debt is serviced from a different source, so your taxes are not increased. VAT is removed from a whole range of items, and then you have all these relief measures that are provided per household, which works out to about $2.1 million per household. So the reality in this present budget 2025 under the current administration, under the PPPC administration, is that there is no real effective debt burden per household. What there is a really effective relief per household that works out to about $2.1 million per household. As I've explained all those costs. In aggregate terms, all the cost of living measures together with the fiscal measures, the innovative fiscal measures that I've mentioned, works out to about $324 billion a year. So that is what stood out in the budget for me. And of course, the budget continues to build on the other sectors. We have to complete all the major transformational projects, which would generate 10 times more benefit in the long term to household and to the country. The bridge has to be completed, the bridge across the Demerara River, the gas to energy project. We're hoping to have that completed maybe by the end of the year. When those projects are completed, we can expect our standard of living to be significantly improved, of course, in the medium and long term, and which would provide a framework in which we could create many more opportunities for growth and development and investment in all the other sectors. Job creation comes with that, and opportunities for our people to come out of poverty.
Anything you would improve if
Before you answer that,
your advice was sought?
Before you answer that, do you had any input into the budget?
I contributed to, yes, I did. I contributed to the private sector commission, the private sector budget submissions. I was instrumental in putting that together. Not me alone, of course. You had a team of people, but I was instrumental in putting that.
No, but you asked directly for your analysis
For the private sector?
from the government?
Well, the government have their normal consultations. I wasn't asked directly, save and except our normal budget submissions where I sit at the PPC as a commissioner.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah. I was asking if your opinion was sought, either in discussion or for building the budget, what would you do differently?
Well, my views on that is public knowledge. Not anything to critique. And for me, I wouldn't say any weakness or limitation in the budget per se that the budget did not pointedly address. But one of the things that we have to address, which the government is well aware of, and it's a real challenge that they're contending with, and from where I sit as well as a commissioner of the Public Procurement Commission, is in execution of contracts, implementation. That's a major limitation where we need to focus in terms of improvement, value for money, substandard work, that type of stuff. Those are things those are real issues that we have to contend with and we have to address by way of a series of things. And I think the government they're doing their part at the executive level. It also requires maybe a series of reforms, legislative reforms, etc., to have stronger penalties as well for contractors that deliver substandard work. And there are all sorts of things happening there. But what I want to say as well, while that is a major concern of mine and the whole of Guyana, including the government, when we look at it in the framework of the grand scheme of things, it's just a small percentage relative to the size, the volume of contracts that the government is administering on a yearly basis. It's just about maybe 5%. But that 5%, unfortunately, has been getting all of the attention, excessive attention, to the point where it is magnified to appear as though it is 100% or 90% of the cases, but that is not the case.
Since you veer off into our capital expenditure and so on, there are many comments that the budget is capital heavy and that it could push us, it is causing over withdrawal from the NRF, and it can push us towards the quote-unquote Dutch disease. Would you kindly explain for the viewers your take on all of that and this Dutch disease thing? What is it?
Okay, so let me deal with the Dutch disease. The Dutch disease is whereby it's a situation in which you have this windfall of resources, foreign exchange inflows from your natural resources, in this case, crude oil. And because of that, because we are an open market and the high inflow of foreign exchange, in theory, you could have a substantial appreciation of the exchange rate. If you have a substantial appreciation of the exchange rate overnight, that in turn could kill off your manufacturing sector, kill off your non-oil sector, because what would happen, your export sectors will become internationally uncompetitive because they will become more expensive on international markets. And then your imports in turn will become cheaper. So your importers, they will become richer at the expense of killing off your export sectors, your indigenous manufacturing sector. So that is the Dutch disease, simply put, in theory. So how do you manage that? You have to manage your exchange rate. You got to ensure that exchange rate, it remains, it's a floating rate, but you ensure that the rate remains stable, relatively stable, which the government has succeeded in achieving that objective. So we don't have the Dutch disease. It's a risk, it's a real risk, but we don't have that. It has not been realized on account of the central bank and, of course, the government managing that. The Natural Resource Fund is one mechanism in which to manage that, as well as it is a function of the central bank in terms of foreign exchange reserve management and so on. If there's an oversupply of foreign exchange in the market, the central bank steps in to mop up that excess liquidity to keep your exchange rate. So that's a function of the central bank, and it's manageable. So that's on the Dutch disease. With respect to the question of whether there is an overspend on the capital budget and whether there is excess spending from the Natural Resource Fund, let me deal with the Natural Resource Fund and the notion of excess spending, because I've dealt with this extensively. There is no excess spending. I had demonstrated, you would recall when, I don't know if you saw it, when AFC leader made this big hullabaloo that we've earned about 5.3 billion US to date. Well, as of the third quarter in 2024, from the inception up to that point, we've earned 5.3 billion US dollars. And he put out this big question. He made this big hullabaloo. He posed a skyscraper building from here. So this building costs $3 billion in the US. Where is our $5 billion, right? And everything is public. Anybody could go and verify what I'm saying. You don't have to take what I'm saying. If you look at as of that time, as of the end of 2024, or the third quarter of 2024, we have only expended 2-point-something billion dollars. Only 40% of the money was expended that we've earned up to that point. 60% of the money remains sitting in the fund. And I think he does not understand how the withdrawal is calculated. So the withdrawal of the fund, the formula is
You talk with
calculated.
Nigel Hughes, not Terence Campbell.
No. So the Natural Resource Fund withdrawal formula, it is calculated based on the closing balance of the fund at the end of the preceding year. So for example, budget 2025 was presented in January 2025. So the projected withdrawal from the NRF fund for 2025, which will be drawn down in parts, not all at once, first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter, which will be drawn down in that manner, is based on applying the formula to the closing balance of 2024. So the closing balance as of December 2024 was 3.1 billion US. So the calculation works out to about $2.5 billion, and the new withdrawal formula. So what that means is that the Natural Resource Fund will never be depleted, save and except you have an oil market crash and something happen, you're not earning, or oil price fall below a certain level, your deposits will decline. All things being equal, your natural resource fund will always have a growing balance in there because of the fact the calculation is based on the closing balance, and you have monies deposited every month or every quarter as we sell our crude into the fund, and then you have your royalties deposit. So at no point in time you'll have a zero balance in the fund. All things being equal, that is, right? Now, coming back to
before you come off, just keep that thought. Do you have any issues with that formula? You like that formula?
No, it's a very simple and transparent formula. Now, let me tell you this. When the APNU, I was at the Private Sector Commission at the time when APNU rushed through with their version of the NRF Act, and they were trying to quickly institutionalize or operationalize the fund, and for them to do that, they had to get nominees from private sector and so on, right? So we were in receipt of that letter, and their withdrawal formula, we never understood it until today. We never understood how they will determine how much they will withdraw from the fund. We never understood scientifically or mathematically how the minister will determine what sum to withdraw. With this simplified formula, a primary school kid could do the calculation. So I like it because the formula is simple, anybody could apply it, and it's transparent. Now, as you ask that question, I should add that the NRF withdrawal rule was amended last year, and I dealt with it 2 days ago because I saw the opposition was making some comparison, and they're making the argument that, look, the government gone and amended the Natural Resource Fund withdrawal rule from let me see if I could find it here quickly so that I can reference it as we speak.
Whilst you're doing that, did you?
So I have it here. So this is the old withdrawal rule, right? So the old withdrawal rule was 100% on the first 500 million, 75% on the second 500 million, 50% on the third 500 million, 25% on the fourth 500 million, 5% on the fifth 500 million, and 3% on any balance in excess of 2.5 billion. That is the old formula. Now, under the old formula, your effective withdrawal on a balance of, say, $6 billion in the fund is 23%. On a balance of $6 billion, your maximum effective rate of withdrawal works out to 20. When you apply that formula, works out to 23% of the fund, which is $1.38 billion. So the formula by design is not designed to withdraw all the monies in the fund. There is a ceiling. There's only a maximum amount that you could withdraw. Now, under the new, so here's the new formula. The new formula is now 100% on the first $1 billion on the fund, 95% on the second $1 billion on the fund, 90% on the third $1 billion, 85% on the fourth $1 billion, 50% on the fifth $1 billion, and 10% on any balance above the 2.5 billion. Now, applying the new formula to a balance of $6 billion, the maximum amount that you can withdraw is 4.3 billion or 71.7%.
So what was Thomas Campbell's complaint?
Hold on, let me finish. Now let's use a different balance. On the old, let's say the fund balance goes up to $12 billion. The old formula, the effective withdrawal rate is about 13%, which would be 1.56 billion if you had maintained the old formula. The new formula on a balance of $12 billion works out to $4.9 billion in monetary value, maximum, or an effective withdrawal rate of 40.8%. Now, when you do the analysis like that, you recognize that with the amended withdrawal formula, which is aimed to have to increase to increase your withdrawal from the fund in relation to the size of the fund, the effective rate of withdrawal has virtually remained the same, which is under 80%. Because if you look back at all the previous withdrawals, based on the balance in the fund, the maximum amount effectively, based on the balance of the fund, was always under a certain threshold, under 80% of
You
the
want
fund.
to deal with Terence Campbell before we go?
So that effective rate of withdrawal has remained the same. So naturally, if you're going to move from a production of 120,000 barrels from forest oil to over 1.3 million barrels by 2030, right? Then it makes sense to increase your withdrawal formula while at the same time maintaining a cap. So the balance will maybe quadruple by 2030, all things being equal. So it makes sense. The point to note is that your effective rate of withdrawal remains unchanged. Your maximum effective rate of withdrawal
The operator said time is going.
relative to the size of the fund.
You dealt with Terence Campbell and his misunderstanding of you did a reply to him.
Yeah, which one?
I read one that you did. You want to tell our viewers where he went wrong before?
There was such a long time I forgot what was the issue. Terence all over the place. And what was it he was saying? I can remind me.
All right. The operator said we have 8 minutes more to go.
Okay.
I want to quickly. You believe Trinidad?
I remember. He was talking about the. Okay, yeah. No, that's
the withdrawal from the
yeah, the withdrawal. Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So let me address. So Terence Campbell's contention is that the government is not complying with Section 16.2 of the Natural Resource Fund Act. I believe I've dealt with that matter comprehensively. The Vice President dealt with it comprehensively, and so did the Finance Minister, Dr. Ashley Singh, dealt with it comprehensively. Now, let me simplify it. What he's referring to, Section 16.2 of the NRF Act, is with respect to the purpose of the withdrawals from the NRF. And that is essentially to finance, according to the Act, national development priorities. Mm-hmm. Now, the question is, what are the national development priorities? And how do we know how much money from the fund, whether it's going to national development priorities?
Specific. Yeah.
Now, it's very simple. It's very, very simple. And you have to understand public sector accounting. So you have the capital side of the budget, and you have the current expenditure side of the budget. Obviously, well, maybe I shouldn't say obviously, but I should say this. National development priorities are expenditure that are related to your capital expenditure of the budget. Let's get on to specifics. The expenditure, the monies that we are expending to build schools across the country, those are national development priorities in our education sector. The 5 new hospitals and other investment in the healthcare sector and infrastructure, healthcare infrastructure, those are national development priorities in our healthcare sector, national healthcare sector. The investments we're making in the social services sector, in housing development, in water, etc., those are our national development priorities. So with that understanding in mind, the monies from the Natural Resources Fund, which is about maybe in this year's budget $500 billion. Your capital budget is more than $500 billion. That will be financed from that
Yeah.
So
let me just be the devil's advocate quickly.
But quickly, we got.
I think what Terence and others are saying is that their understanding is that the government must specify we're taking out this $2 and it's going to this, so we can see what the oil money is building, not throw it into a pool and then distribute it among thing. What you say about that?
So
But quickly,
think we don't have to make it too complicated. Think of your household finances. You managing your own finances. You are making, let's say you're making $200,000 a month. You earning $200,000 a month. Your wife is earning another $200,000 a month. Your son is earning another $200,000 a month. That's $600,000. Now, in the expenditure, you make certain provisions. You allocate to your son, listen, you take care of the light bill, you take care of the phone bill, the wife can take care of the groceries, you can take care of the mortgage. Now, you can either do that, you can either choose to do that independently, or you can either choose to have, whether you have an account at the bank, your wife on the account, or and your son on the account. You can have one account. You put all the money in there because all of you getting paid by way of bank transfers, and you transfer money to deal with your household expenditure. So your responsibility, your bill that you have to pay, all the money is in there, but you're accounting for it. So it doesn't matter whether the money goes into a fund and it gets mixed up with other fund. That's nonsense. It comes down to the accounting. We're putting $500 billion in the consolidated fund. $100 billion is for the education sector. That is accounted for. We don't have to create 100 accounts. Okay, we bill in 100 house. So we put in house money in one account. Then we can put an electricity. Let me use the same household. Let me use the same household. It's the equivalent of saying, listen, we got to create an account for electricity bill. We got to create a water bill account. We got to create a grocery account. Right? Practically, it's nonsensical, right?
Freddie got to close the question.
There's an esoteric part of the budget, of the 2023 budget, with Joel Bagwa, which Leonard Gildavi and I raised with you. And that esoteric dimension of the budget continues. I'd like to hear your take on it, as we got a couple of seconds. I should have brought this up more. Why would you give public assistance $1,500 more in 2023, and now it's $3,000? Those are people who need the money. Why would you not put more into public assistance? It has been raised by $3,000. These are people who are physically challenged, mentally challenged. They have no real source of income. It's called people asking the state to help them.
I think outside of that, there's a range of other social services and assistance that are, if I'm not mistaken, that are available to those groups of people.
We gotta go, Joel. I wanted to tell you that I think that part of the budget should. I think public assistance should go, but we gotta close. And I want to ask you, what did you do with the $100,000 that you collected?
I don't think I spent it as yet.
Oh, you haven't spent it yet? Well, I haven't collected mine. I want to
My
know.
wife didn't collect hers as yet. I got mine.
Oh, you got yours?
Yeah.
Well, I didn't get mine yet. You got yours? But please tell me how to get my $100,000.
You have it till the budget pass.
They have a whole week of parliament debate coming up, right?
No. Budget, they're finishing this week.
Well, but this week, tonight is Monday.
Yeah.
So when they finishing?
Thursday or Friday.
A whole week then. Oh, Joel, thanks for coming to us. It's always good to have you here to explain the financial maze of Guyana's economy. Thanks for being with us. We'll certainly have you back here in another couple of weeks. This has been Budget Show with Joel Bagwandin. My co-host was Leonard Craig. I hope Joel wasn't too technical, but it did make a lot of sense of what he said. We will see you on Wednesdays, and I normally say, catch you later. Bye-bye.